Okay, Doug morning. Doug morning to you. Welcome to the good world. I am Seth. That's Charlie. And we're on our way to the dog park, as we so often are. So I want to pick up where I basically, I guess it's not quite where I left off yesterday, but I sort of want to keep talking a little about some of the themes I was talking about yesterday. And particularly about inherited narratives. Defensiveness is a big part of it. Toughness. So I want to continue talking a little bit about the Proud Boys. Just there again, not to like try to be insulting to anyone, but there's an aspect of I've seen on the internet, people will post their Proud Boy initiation ritual, and there's an aspect of it that I think is both worth commenting on, and that is, to me at least, indicative of some of these larger points that I'm trying to make. Indicative, illustrative is probably the right word. Intersection. Okay, we're good, folks. No death yet. So yeah, for those who haven't seen it, the Proud Boys initiation involves, I'm gonna get the specifics wrong, so I apologize for that. But it's something. There's a thing you say, sort of an oath, vow, whatever, and then the second part is other people punch you while you try to name. I think it's like 5 breakfast cereals, which is, hazing rituals are a way to build camaraderie. So yeah, that makes sense that's part of it. But part of the initial oath, vow, whatever you want to call it, preamble, probably not preamble. Part of it ends with saying, I will not apologize for creating Western civilization or building Western civilization, something like that. And this to me is a really good example of what I was trying to talk about yesterday. I didn't really get as much into defensiveness, so I'm going to talk about that a little more today. But what I was talking about yesterday with like inherited narratives, because this I will not apologize for building Western civilization is such a perfect example of being defensive over a thing that we've inherited that we don't actually, feeling a need to take ownership of something that is not ours. It's not a thing we need to worry about taking ownership of, let alone justifying. So the I will not apologize for building Western civilization. The good news is no one's asking you to, because you didn't build it. I said this on Twitter at some point, but like, you didn't build Western civilization any more than I did as a white man, or any more than I, as an a person of Eastern European Jewish descent, created the theory of relativity just because Einstein did that. Western civilization, was built by Europeans on the backs of a lot of plundered labor of people who weren't Europeans, and so it's you don't have to apologize for it because you didn't do it. You inherited it just like I did, just like everyone else did. And the thing about inheriting an unjust system is that we don't actually have to defend it, and we've been, I think our culture conditions us, and our brains are wired to get defensive about these things, right? It does, I guess, come back a little bit to what I was saying yesterday. I was raised to believe that blah blah blah, and therefore I'm the implied, and therefore I'm a good person. And all of this is a giant system that we inherited. You don't have to apologize for it. You didn't do it. You didn't put it there. You just inherited it. And so you don't need to take on the burdens of all of the shitty things that have come out of it. And there are plenty of really shitty things that have come out of it. You can compare a lot of especially if you sort of look back at historical cultures, you can compare European culture to other places, and like, yes, there was violence. I'm not going to sort of, you know, claim that that everywhere else was perfect, but there are sort of a lot of elements in the philosophies of indigenous American cultures and Asian cultures. I know less about earlier African cultures, so not that I know that much, frankly, about indigenous American or Asian cultures, but I don't know, I've been like studying the Tao recently, and so that's been really interesting. And the Four Agreements, at least, presents itself as being based on ancient Toltec wisdom. So I don't know. It's hard to tell if that's real or if it's a marketing ploy, but it's certainly the case that the actual content of it is valuable. Culturally, there are something you see less in sort of European Western culture is a belief in sort of tending to the system, tending to the overall, you know, caring for nature, respecting nature. There's a lot more about sort of conquest and plunder and the idea that if we can take something from someone else, then it's ours to have. And you know, I think what's hard about it is that it is technically true that if you take something away from someone else, and they can't keep you from taking it, now it's yours. But I don't think anyone is going to go around saying, oh, bullying is actually great. Again, it's all kind of poison in the ecosystem. But we are so conditioned to take the things that we have been born into and internalize them as part of our identity. And when they become part of our identity, then that's when we get defensive. And one of the hardest and most challenging human instincts to overcome, both individually and for us to sort of work on collectively, is defensiveness, because it is a deeply embedded instinct, and it comes from real survival needs, right? If you're back on the savannah tens of thousands of years ago, and something is threatening to you, then being defensive is a way to survive. And we don't have the same kind of threats that our distant ancestors faced, but we still have things that feel like it, and we've sort of, I guess, combined threats to our physical well-being with threats to sort of our perception of our own identity. And so, you know, this idea of I won't apologize for creating Western civilization comes out of a sense of my identity is wrapped up in the world that I was born into, and when other people say bad things about it, that makes me feel bad, right? Like that's ultimately what it is. It's I feel bad and I don't want to feel bad, and that is something that I think all of us can relate to, whether we are straight white men in America or whether we're anyone else. The fundamental driver of human behavior is not wanting to feel bad. Wanting to feel bad as infrequently as possible. I had a Twitter conversation yesterday with someone about the difference between sort of the museum nature of like Nazi concentration camps versus plantations in the American South, where a lot of the ways that that people were forced into labor were, you know, there was plenty of overlap. There were differences, but not, you know, more differences of kind than of degree. Like it's all pretty awful. It's just a different flavor of awful. But we have, there is a fairly common thing on tours of these slave plantations where people will ask, you know, well, was the master at this plantation, you know, a kind and benevolent slave owner, which is, it just kind of misses everything, right? Like we want, what we are doing in that moment is trying to come up with a way to feel less bad about something that feels like a part of our own history, right? If you're American, and especially if you are white in America, you feel you feel a sense of guilt. White guilt is definitely a thing. I think one of my college roommates had he had a hat that said suburbs. I think I just at some point described him as the personal embodiment of white guilt. Hi, Jesse. But guilt is a really unpleasant feeling. Believe me, I'm Jewish, I know. And so we look for reasons to avoid it, and especially, I think what is tricky is when we feel that someone is trying to make us feel guilty for something that is not our fault. We try to avoid it. Or just when we are presented with circumstances that make us feel guilty, we try to avoid it. Sometimes it's even for things that are our fault. We really don't like to acknowledge when we have hurt each other. Or if we do, we really like to come up with justifications for it. And this is something that completely transcends political boundaries. A thing that frustrates me deeply about other people who work in progressive politics or tweet about progressive politics, whatever, is the tendency to sort of shit on people on the other side for not for believing things that I think we can. It is completely reasonable to think that someone else's beliefs are really harmful. There are a lot of beliefs out there that I think are really harmful, but trying to bully someone out of them is just not. It's not a way to change minds, and all it does is make them feel bullied and make them dig deeper into what they're doing. And so that's a big part. Like the whole Proud Boy thing comes from a feeling of defensiveness, and particularly. Look, it's one thing if you're a straight white dude like me who has inherited a lot of the privileges of being a straight white dude, but there are also a lot of folks who haven't, and also just no one likes to feel attacked. And so if you feel attacked all the time, then you will sort of turn to whatever group makes you feel comfortable and at home. And so that's kind of where it is all coming from. I know Charlie. Charlie has feelings. Charlie always has feelings. Beeps. I know, we're at the stoplight. That's the worst. You just want to get to the park already. Yeah, here we go. Okay, that side wind machine. Anyway, look, I think anyone who is demanding that straight white dudes like me apologize for creating Western civilization is reacting to their own experience of pain and injustice. And I think anyone who is getting defensive about it is also reacting to their own experience of pain and injustice. But neither of those things does anything to solve the problem. Defensiveness is not about solving the problem. Defensiveness is about getting rid of, it's about intimidating and driving away anyone who you think might make you a little uncomfortable. And it's always a little amusing to me when people say things that are like deliberately provocative and then claim that people who are upset by it say things like, oh, well, this is what happens when you're presented with thoughts that are uncomfortable to you. I mean, first off, yeah, everyone, no one reacts well to being condescended to and insulted. Let's start there, right? And so if someone is feeling condescended to and insulted, that doesn't mean that they're an asshole or a piece of shit, and it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. But it's an opportunity to communicate and to sort of practice communicating ourselves a little better. And so often when we don't feel either capable of expressing ourselves or safe expressing ourselves, we turn to groups who sort of give us a template, right? They give us words to say and a membership to be a part of, and instant camaraderie. And so we don't have to work as hard to figure out who we are and to express ourselves, because that stuff takes work, and it's so much easier to just let someone else put words in your mouth. But ultimately, all that's, I can't tell what this person is doing. Are you pulling over? Okay. All that's doing when we let someone else put words in our mouth is it's a substitute for real connection. It is not, and it feels in a lot of ways like real connection. Sometimes it also feels like critical thinking, which it's not. It's just letting someone put words in our mouth. And like any, jolt of dopamine in our brain, it's habit forming. It rewards itself. And so it feels like, good progress and like we're doing something good, but it is ultimately any warm feeling that we have that has defensiveness and conflict at its root is just going to keep escalating that feeling of tension within us. I mean, there's a reason that people who join groups, and I'm not even limiting this to the Proud Boys at all, but anyone who joins a group that is based on sort of shared feelings of grievance, a lot of what it ends up doing is escalating the feeling of grievance. And so sure, you get some connection, but you're also just being made to feel unhappy. Whereas if you can find, I know, Charlie, we're at the park. If you can find a way to really understand and love yourself and express yourself and really communicate who you are and feel comfortable and at ease with who you are, then you don't need to sort of have this lingering tension and anger and sort of that knot that sits inside your stomach anytime someone outside the group says something that upsets you. You can just connect. You can just have that feeling of human connection and mutual support. And it's great. And I know, because that's what I've been doing with my life for the last, for most of my life, but especially the last year and a half. Anyway, we're at the dog park. Charlie has sounds and feelings. I'm going to get out, but we'll be back very soon. Okay, good Bob. I know. Yes. Yeah, okay. Sweaty, shiny head. Something funny that happened to me the other day is that I was talking to Susie about my needs for recording stuff, and I kept saying videotape. I'm going to videotape that, and I felt a little old. But time just keeps on going, so it's just going to keep happening more. Oh well. Anyway, if you enjoy this channel and this program and my videotapes, please click the like button, click the subscribe button, share this with your friends, all of those things. Thank you so much. Okay, bye. Okay, hi. We are back. I just stopped to pick up lunch from the delicious Maya's Authentic Mexican Food here in Grass Valley, California. I forgot to think about what I was going to talk about, so I don't necessarily, I don't know. I feel like I'm done, at least for now, talking about the Proud Boys, because I think it's something that's honestly really challenging when thinking about sort of how to confront issues in society, is talking about things that are systemic issues in a way that doesn't feel like a personal attack on people who it applies to. And so in this case, I'm trying to use the Proud Boys as a way to illustrate a larger point about inherited narratives and defensiveness and all of these things. But I am certain that if you're a member of the Proud Boys and you're watching this, you're probably gonna. There's a decent chance that what I'm saying is gonna upset and offend you, and so I apologize, and it's tough to do, but I also, at the end of the day, all I'm trying to do is speak truth and share my point of view and my perspective on the world. And so, I do apologize when that's hurtful, and you don't have to agree with me, but I am doing my best to sort of recognize everyone's perspective, and what I want is for us to get to a point where people who join an organization like the Proud Boys don't feel a need I mean, if the organization is genuinely going to just be for sort of group bonding and things like that, then that's great. But there's any organization that is about sort of uniting together for the purpose of conflict is going to create problems, and it's not something that's limited to right-wing organizations. I do think that it is my experience that right-wing organizations tend to be a little more violent, and that's tough because they'll say, well, what about Antifa? And I don't know, I worked for 10 years in progressive politics, and I've never met anyone who's a member of Antifa, so I don't, but to the extent that there are members of Antifa who are being violent, and I know there are some, right, it's not zero, I don't think that's helpful either. I think perpetuating violence and conflict just makes the problem worse. You're never gonna beat the bad guys, you're just gonna make them come back at you harder. And this actually segues pretty nicely into something that I have been wanting to talk about, which is the idea of toughness in our society, and particularly toughness as it relates to masculinity, but I think it just sort of is toughness in general. And those of you who follow me on Twitter may have seen me tweet about this yesterday, but we have a really, really strong tendency to think of toughness as the ability to fight back. And even, the reason that a lot of people gave for their support of Donald Trump, both in the run-up to and during the Trump administration, is that he's a fighter, that he's punching back against the left. And, I always feel a little weird about that because, I don't think of myself necessarily as part of the left, but I know that a lot of people would group me into that. I think there are elements of any ideology that are useful. I don't think any complete and total ideology, like limiting yourself to one worldview, is not going to be effective in a world where there are infinite perspectives. And so I think it's important to try to sort of listen to every perspective and keep the parts that I think are good and reject the parts that I think aren't. But, so there's this belief that, the left are a bunch of bullies. My response, I think, would sort of be covered by my episode yesterday where, or I guess this is posting on Monday, so it would be my episode from last Friday, where, I talked about the fact that when people get really angry and upset, it comes from a place of real experience, and so, we feel bullied by it, but it's actually just them feeling frustrated and not having a good outlet to deal with it. And it sucks when they take it out on us, but we can, I think that perspective is really important. Anyway, so there's this idea that toughness is someone who will fight back against whatever. And I guess there is an extent to which I am thinking myself as a fighter, but not against, I don't believe in fighting against people. I do think it is important to fight against systems, and sometimes those systems include organizations that do harm. A thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is religion. Boy, I'm like, the ATD is really strong today. And I think there is a tendency for people to demonize religion, and there have been a lot of cases where religion has been used for real harm and violence, but that tends to be about the way an organization or a person or a group of people are using religion as opposed to religion itself. Religion is a tool. It is a guideline. It's not everything. In the same way that you can't build a house using only hammers. The hammers are not good or bad, but there's a difference between using a hammer to build a house and using a hammer to hit someone and hurt someone with it, right? The tool is just a tool. How someone uses it is what matters. Anyway, I'm digressing a bit. So we have this idea of toughness, and we say, oh, you need to get tough. The world is going to be hard on you, and so you need to toughen up and be ready to fight back. And I do think it is unquestionably true to say that the world can and will be really hard on all of us across our lives in any number of ways. But I think the type of toughness that is necessary for dealing with that is the kind of toughness that is about absorbing it and being able to keep on going, right? Like if your brother gets eaten by a lion, going out and taking, I don't know why that's the example I went with, but it is, going out and taking it, like killing every lion is a very unhealthy response for the world, and it's probably not healthy for you. But being able to like process the pain and move onward is a really important skill. And so I have come to think of toughness not as sort of the reflex to jump into a fight and to beat the shit out of people we don't like. And I think all of us have a version of that. And, you know, there are going to be people who are going to say that beating the shit out of someone verbally and emotionally is okay, when they would never be okay with beating the shit out of someone physically. And there are people who are going to think that the opposite is true. And I would say that beating the shit out of someone, no matter what they have done and no matter what your approach, is just going to do harm, and it's just going to reinforce violence, and it's just going to poison the entire system. So I have really come into the idea of toughness as resilience, and the ability to maintain your peace and your balance even as the world and other people are trying to poke you and punch you and trying to knock you off your balance. Because the way that people who are being violent defeat you is by provoking you into violence in response. All they want is for you to be violent so they can say, look, this person is violent, I'm acting in self-defense. And it's not because they're a bad person or a good person, it's because they've been hurt and they don't know what to do with that anger, and so they want to take that anger out somewhere, and so they're looking for a justification, they're looking for a rationalization. I used to do a lot of this, not physically, as you might be able to tell from looking at me, but boy, I could spend some time on the internet going around and looking for someone to just beat the shit out of with words. I don't know if you can tell at this point, but words come pretty easily to me, and I have a lot of them. And so the part of my brain, so this is also a thing that was sort of part of my experience in my first relationship, where I could be really cruel to my partner and really emotionally abusive. It was when I was in college and I was in an improv comedy group, and the same skill that made me able to think of a funny punchline or just an interesting, like an idea just way out of left field, the same idea that could do that really quickly, or the same skill rather that could do that really quickly, was also the skill that made me really good at thinking of really, really mean, biting insults really quickly. And so put me out on the internet and give me a motivation to go and hurt people who I think are doing harm, and I can do a lot of harm in response. And this is sort of what I mean. I sort of thought that I was being a tough guy. I thought I was being a hero, and all I was doing was making someone who already felt so shitty that they needed to go be a dick on the internet, I was going and making them feel shittier. And so what does that accomplish? So what I've been working on, and it's taken work, and it's taken time, and it's taken energy, and I've said this before, but our brains are lazy. We don't want to do that emotional work, and so it's hard, but I will tell you it's worth it. In the same way, I'm not as good at exercising physically, so I'm pudgy. I think I'm technically even obese. But I am pretty good at sort of doing the mental exercise, and however good you are at it, you can always be better. So I would, encourage you to work on it yourself. That's a cool, pretty bird, or maybe I think it was a bird. For a moment, I thought it was a bat. Yeah, think of it this way. There are sort of two ways to think about it. Going to give you a couple of analogies. One is you can think of toughness as tough like leather, right? Leather is not going to hurt anyone. It's in fact very, very smooth once it's tanned and treated and all of that. But it's also very hard to puncture. And we can be tough like that, where we are hard to puncture, we are hard to damage, we are resilient, but we are still soft in our engaging with other people, because that's the only way we're ever going to put an end to all of the violence and pain in the world that we've inherited. Again, none of this violence and pain that it's not our fault. It's not our parents' fault. It's just a byproduct of humans existing over a long period of time without having the wherewithal to understand things like social psychology and cognitive bias and sort of all of these, and neuropsychology is also part of it, all of the ways that our brains behave. And all of this is stuff that we've really been learning across the last 50 years or so as technology has been going crazy. So that's the main reason this stuff hasn't been solved yet. And so we have the ability, now that we know these things from science, to actually do something about it. And one example is being tough like leather, and being able to respond in ways that are still compassionate and not take someone else's pain personally, and instead be able to respond by helping them soothe their pain. The other example that I love of this, I mentioned the other day, Steven Universe, which is one of my favorite television programs. And I'm not gonna spoil anything, but the whole show is great, and in particular, I think the message of the series finale of it's sort of split into, there's the first series, then there's a movie, then there's sort of a sequel series. So the finale of the first series does a great job of sort of illustrating some of these ideas. But I can, without spoiling any of that, I can say that, so Steven is half gem. He's part of this super race of alien, super metaphysical women, and they all have their own special weapons, and Steven's weapon is a shield, and I love that so much. And he does well. Actually, I don't know that he ever uses it as a weapon. In the video games he does, but I'm not sure he does in the series. But it's extremely powerful. His weapon is a shield because all he needs is the resilience and the ability to protect himself from harm. And then he can get through whatever violence people are trying to throw at him and get to the point where they can engage in conversation and work through the pain that they share. And that's basically the entire show, is just, people trying to hurt Steven, not people, intergalactic super women, trying to hurt Steve. I mean, there's all kinds of other stuff, but a big part of the through line is people trying to hurt Steven. He has a shield. He's able to protect himself without hurting back. And then he's able to eventually get through and have a conversation with the person. And so the kind of toughness that I think all of us could really aspire to, and all of us could benefit if we spend more time working towards, is that kind of toughness, that leathery, tough but soft. It also, because ideas are never new, no idea is ever new, really. There is a lot of stuff in the Tao Te Ching that is about this, and particularly about how the ancient Tao sages put a lot of attention and value on being flexible. And the example is that when a plant dies, it becomes really stiff and it just blows right over. But when it's alive, it's flexible, it bends with the wind, it can adapt, when the dirt changes and the landscape changes under it, it can adapt to changes in water, and the power of flexibility to enable us to survive. We think we need... It's funny because the toughness and the fighting comes out of our survival instinct, and it's the thing that we genuinely convince ourselves it's what we need to do to survive, because the world is constantly telling us that. And so what I am trying to tell you is you don't need to be able to beat someone up to survive, whether that's physically, emotionally, economically, whatever. All you need to do to survive is Be strong enough internally that they can't hurt you. Build up enough of a shield that no one can hurt you. And obviously there is some, we're all mortal. There is some extent to which that's impossible. But look, fighting is also going to run into the same problem. Fighting isn't going to keep you from dying ever. So I would encourage all of you to join me in working on building a stronger shield and putting down our swords. Great. I just got home. Charlie's ready to get out of the car. I'm ready for lunch, and I'll be back in a bit for some meditation. Okay, see you soon.
Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe.
Here. Hi. So we're mixing things up a little today because. So I recorded the rest of today's video on yesterday, which was Friday. Today is Saturday. Yeah, Charlie, you can drink that water. Okay, I guess not. Anyway, this is my back porch. So what happened is I recorded the video, then I had lunch, and then in the afternoon I had a really lovely and what turned into multi-hour catch-up session with my friend Maddie, who I haven't spoken to in a while, and that was really delightful, but it means I did not end up I sort of missed my usual window for meditation, which also means I didn't record it. And because the way that we keep habits going is by getting right back on the horse the next day, I figured I would just record this out here on my back porch today. Susie is off enjoying some time out in nature. She's just sitting by the Yuba River and reading. Charlie is out here on the porch with me. I'm looking at him right now, but there are some deer down there from this direction, and Charlie really does not like deer. So he just ran over to stare them down. And actually they ran away, which is not usually how it goes. Usually what happens is that he goes and like barks and loses his mind at them, and they don't care because the deer around here are just extremely habituated to the presence of humans. So they DGAF. But Charlie seems to have just successfully run them off here. So that's, I'm sure he's happy about that. Here, I can show you. Let's just show you. There's Charlorb. He's just looking for the deers. That plant over there is it's the result of a minor failure on my part, which is it's an arugula plant, and we got it last weekend at a farmer's market. It's just a plant start. And I sort of forgot that I had gotten it because I often forget things that don't move. And so I hadn't been watering it. And so yesterday, Susie and I transplanted it into that bag, and we're hoping it's going to survive. I watered it yesterday. I'm going to water it again today. But we'll see. We'll find out. Hopefully the arugula lives. Also, it's hot out here, so I'm just wearing an undershirt, so you get to enjoy my my pudge. Anyway, yeah. So let's do a little meditation. I know I need it. You may need it also. Oh, it's hot. So also, I'm just gonna warn you. I mean, first off, I'm just going off natural sunlight here, so I realize that I look a little like half overexposed on one side and half completely underexposed on the other. The sun is right there. Not quite directly above me, but it's pretty hot. So I will warn you that I will be shiny and sweaty this entire time. But that's the nature of the world. Okay, setting up my meditation app. Trying to decide if I want to do something different. No, for now, we'll just do the same thing. I keep meaning to grab my Thich Nhat Hanh book. No, I did it wrong again. Thich Nhat Hanh. I keep meaning to grab that book because he's got different meditations in there, and I feel like I should mix it up just for the sake of variety for you all. But for now, it's just the same. So anyway, I'll push the start button. Bell's going to go off. I have a Bluetooth speaker out here, so you should be able to hear the bell. And I'm going to sit here and think to myself, I follow my breath all the way in, I follow my breath all the way out, and through the course of it, my mind will wander, your mind will wander, and just whenever you catch your mind wandering, just come back to wherever you are. And if you're not doing, a silent sitting meditation as I am, if you're just continuing to do whatever you're doing, maybe you're cleaning up around the house, that's part of my plan for today. Then just I would say just keep trying to focus mindfully on whatever you're doing, and when your mind wanders, just bring it back to whatever you're doing. It's all about sort of just keeping our focus and attention, not just keeping it on whatever we're doing, but trying to redirect it back to where we are whenever it drifts. That's what the practice is. Okay, here we go. Going to push the start button. 13 seconds, 12, 11, and so on. And I will see you in about 10 minutes. Yeah, just getting a little comfortable here. Okay. It's always good to get back into practice, form, shape, thing. Okay. Also, it occurred to me that the arugula plant is a nice realization of a metaphor I was talking about earlier in the week. I can't believe I sort of missed the opportunity to talk about it, but I mentioned earlier in the week that I think that a lot of humanity is like a garden, and when plants don't get their basic needs met, when they don't get water, when they don't get sunlight, when they don't have good soil, they can't survive, or at least they really, really struggle to survive. And people are just the same. We don't need a lot, but we need the basics. And in a society that treats the basics as a privilege reserved for people who meet some threshold of approval from people who already have all of their basic needs met, it's just harmful, and we're all just hurting ourselves by having this world that is such a struggle for so many. We could have a really amazing society if we just are willing to accept that people can't thrive unless they have at least some basic amount of help. Much like a plant, much like my arugula plant, which, we'll see if it makes it. It may not. An arugula plant can be replaced much more easily than a person. Anyway, well, it can and it can't, right? That plant is dead, or will potentially be dead. But there are others, but people are not so interchangeable. That's true. Okay, that's what I got for today. Happy Monday, because it's going to be Monday when this goes up. Hope you had a good weekend. Hope you have a good week. Hope this gets things going nicely. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Closing the thing, pushing the button. This is my nose up close. I have no idea whose dog this is. It just arrived next to me with a frisbee and keeps bringing it back.
You look like a goo-goo man.
It's also very talented at catching frisbees. But at some point I threw a frisbee and it landed next to another gentleman, and the dog picked it up and brought the frisbee to him. He's just bringing this frisbee to everybody. Yeah, here we go. Don't know if I'm actually capturing it because I'm watching you and not my phone. Man, talented dog. Meanwhile, Charlie's drinking from a bucket. Love you, Charlie.